So recently I saw a video from a popular online character named Destiny, or Stephen Bunnell, and he was in dialogue with a Zionist Jew named Joseph Cohen. There was something that came up in their discussion that really stuck out to me, and so I made a short video of it. But after posting it, I was continuing to think about it, and I had some more thoughts that I wanted to articulate. So I thought of Destiny's response to Joseph's argument, and I thought of what I'm calling Destiny's wager. So many people have probably heard of Pascal's wager. I'll use Pascal's wager as a sample wager to show how Destiny's wager plays out. So Pascal's wager sets up a table with 4 quadrants on it. In the left column, we're going to have the belief that God exists. And on the right column, we're going to have the belief that God does not exist. In the top row, we're going to have that God does actually exist. And on the bottom row, we're going to have that God does not exist. So now we take this dilemma of whether God exists or not and apply it into these 4 different quadrants. So if we believe that God exists and we're right, we've got eternal reward to gain. That's a lot of reward. Big happy. If we believe that God exists and we're wrong, then, well, we've got some temporal pleasures to kind of forego, but ideally you can probably live a pretty good life anyway, so minimal loss, really. However, on the atheist side, we believe God does not exist. If we believe God does not exist and we're right, then, well, we've got about like 80 years of enjoying life and the pleasures of life, but ultimately we die and it doesn't really matter anyway, so, kind of small sort of win, maybe. But if we don't believe God exists and we lose, then, well, big loss. So, given the win for theism far outshines the win for atheism, and given the L for theism is much more tolerable than the L for atheism, it's just the rational decision to go with theism rather than atheism. Now, this is just a basic format of Pascal's wager. I'm not actually addressing the different theological views of heaven and hell and whether eternal conscious torment or annihilationism is true, right? I'm not covering any of that. I'm just covering the basic idea of Pascal's wager, and I'm using it as a sample. I'm just presenting the format of it, the 4 different quadrants, the win and lose on each side of the team. So keep that format in mind as we look into Destiny's wager. So let's look at what Destiny and Joseph talked about to see what I'm putting their wager on. Joseph says that the Palestinians in Gaza should be allowed to leave Gaza if they want to find a safer place while the war goes on, and then after the war they should be able to come back. He says about half of the Gazan people, so about 1 million people, want to leave Gaza to flee the war zone. Destiny presents a counter-argument that 1 million people leaving Gaza would enable the IDF, the Israel Defense Force, to come in, take control of Gaza, and just, well, it's our territory now, tough luck. Now, Joseph is being very clear he does not want that to happen. He's also claiming that he doesn't think the IDF is planning on that. Of course, it's really difficult to really say what an army is and is not ultimately going to do. Governments especially are kind of notorious for breaking their promises. But just so we're clear, and so we can truly get these arguments from the horses' mouths, let's go ahead and watch most of the video. I'm going to cut different parts of it out, as there's a lot of studying and them scrambling for their thoughts. So we're not going to be watching the entire thing.
I mean, according to polls, half of Gazans want to voluntarily leave. I think if they want to voluntarily leave, it's cruel to not let them leave, provided they can come back if they want to once the reconstruction has happened. But yeah.
Sure, just as you understand a lot of that is like really scary from the Palestinian perspective, right? The idea that, and also from if half the Palestinians leave, right? Like the whole fight.
No, that's what they're saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, I think it's 48% of Palestinians that live in Gaza today explicitly told them that they would want to leave if Israel was able to facilitate their movement. I mean, this is not based on who's living there long term. This is based on the fact this is a war zone. It looks like a hellscape. You've got all manner of difficulties that people face, from electricity, water, medical, food. It's just hell on earth to live there. In every other war, there have been large numbers of major war. There have been large numbers of refugees from Yemen, from Syria, from Ukraine, 6 million refugees from east of those. This is the only war that I'm aware of where the neighboring countries have locked the door. I understand why Israel doesn't allow Palestinians to move into Israel. I don't understand why Egypt doesn't allow refugees that want to flee the war to flee. So I'm talking literally about people being able to flee war. That doesn't mean that anyone who leaves should not be able to return, but they should be able to leave a war if they want to leave a war. It seems incredibly cruel to lock the southern border.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just saying that the initial accusations were that this war was starting with the attempt to basically purge as many Palestinians from the Gaza Strip as possible. And so the idea of a million of them leaving without like a strict guarantee that they would be alled back would seem to
But that's
fulfill all of
but
the
that's not what I
initial.
said.
I
So
understand that's not what
I
you
mean,
said, but
because
like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I understand, but like the beginning thing, stated in the war is also that we're not going to be like kicking all these Palestinians out, right? But if it
And
happens,
I don't believe one Palestinian should be forcefully moved out of there. If they want, anyone who wants to stay there should be able to stay. Anyone who wants to leave should be able to leave, and anyone who wants to return should be able to return. And that feels fair to me.
sure, I understand that, yeah, but you understand that like Palestinians, or at least the Palestinian supporters in the West, and probably Palestinians themselves, might not feel very secure in the ability to leave and come back, right? That would be a
So you would look to put in place international guarantees that they would be able to return, but for whatever they're worth, I can't think of
But do you
anything
think
more
there
you can do.
who would Israeli
So
work
you
with
say so. Let me
internationally?
flip that. Let me
Yeah.
push that back to you then. Are you saying that Palestinians that want to leave a war zone should not be able to leave?
Mm, that want to leave a war zone should be able to leave. I don't know. I'd have to think a lot about what the
Okay, yeah.
structure of them leaving looks.
If you've got a child, would you want your child to live through those conditions? Difficulty getting food, difficulty getting accessing clean water, difficulty getting electricity, difficulty getting all the basic necessities. On top of the added fact, there's an ongoing war between radical jihadists and the most powerful military in the Middle East, and you've seen the devastation that has been. That just it has engulfed your entire life. Would you, as a father, want your child to be able to leave?
So this is very hard because in the West, I have a country, I have a place that I can call my home, and I don't have to think about making these types of sacrifices ever. The obvious answer seems to be that, yeah, I think I would want my child to be able to go anywhere and to not suffer any of these hardships. That's very true. But I mean, like, arguably, the entire founding of your country was a bunch of people saying like, "F it, we're gonna go tough it out here and see how it works." And the first few groups of people that went, it fucking sucked, right? Your first couple batches of people that came from Eastern Russia had a really rough time, and over half of them left up until 1920. You said it yourself. There were massacres, famous ones. Tehran was one, where people went and they died. And it's not like people were saying, "Oh, we should just pack up and leave and go back to Brooklyn or go back to Europe or whatever." Right? There are people that are willing to make sacrifices to maintain like territory, because they feel like they have some massive historical right to it. I don't have to make those decisions in the United States. It's not as simple as just like running away from an enemy that's attacking me. You're talking about a group of people that are willing to suicide bomb sometimes in order to fight a country. It wouldn't surprise me if these people are also willing to suicide their families.
100,
Well.
and that's why it's voluntary. 100%, and that's why it should be optional for anyone that wants to leave
Yeah, I
and
understand, but
doesn't
like we
want to
have
put
to.
a jump through that.
Yeah, I understand. I agree with you. Like on a very like on a micro level, like oh, you should obviously be able to leave a place where it's fucked. But on a macro level, if we say that if it gets really fucked, people should be able to leave, well, now you've painted the perfect conditions for Israel to make a situation unlivable, and then all the people leave because they're exercising their individual freedoms to do so. And now Israel has achieved the long scale victory of like basically the ethnic cleansing of the Gaza Strip. Right. And we've done it the whole time while being
But
quote unquote respectful of
this is
families. But this is like not probably a good thing to do if you're from the Palestinian or
is
from the Arab side, right?
Okay, so now that we've clearly heard each person's positions and arguments, let's put the pros and cons into these four quadrants. In the left column, we're going to have Joseph's argument that the Palestinians should be allowed to leave Gaza. And in the right column, we're going to have Destiny's argument that they should not be allowed to leave Gaza. On the top row, we're going to have that the IDF will allow them to come back. And on the bottom row, we're going to have that the IDF will not let them come back. So let's analyze these positions. If the Palestinians are allowed to leave Gaza and come back, then approximately 1 million Gazan citizens will be able to safely escape the war and safely return. Of course, this is not to say there won't be suffering. There will be. It's war, and war is complicated. But this is a way out of the war for the Gazan citizens who are willing to risk it. Overall, I would say this is a win for everyone. Again, not to say that there won't be suffering, but considering the horrors of the actual war, this is, I think, the best outcome for everyone. If, however, the Palestinians are allowed to leave, but the Israeli government cracks down and does not let them return, then this really sucks. I mean, 1 million Gazan citizens did at least get to survive, but now they've got to completely recreate life somewhere else. This is just frankly a loss for the Palestinian people. And yeah, it sucks for the Palestinian people. All things going properly, the IDF should uphold its promises. Again, war is complicated and messy, but if the IDF tells these people, leave Gaza, we will let you come back, they should at least do their best effort to make sure that they can come back. This scenario does suck. Now, if we do not let the Palestinians leave, then we'll have about 1 million Gazan citizens who want to escape, given the opportunity to, but are not being allowed to, and are being forced to stay against their will. They're being forced to stay in a war that Destiny has conceded that Hamas is using civilian casualties for their own agendas. So if they're being forced to stay when the Israeli government would allow them to return if they left, then this is a lot of potential senseless deaths of people who could have been spared if they would have just been allowed to leave. Now, if Israel would not let them return if they were allowed to leave, but they're not allowed to leave, well, I mean, to be frank, this is just the greatest lose of all. They're forced to stay in the middle of a fight they don't want to serve as human meat shields for a tyrannical mob while being pushed around by a foreign power that just wants nothing more than to have them completely removed from the land. This is the Gazan people being batted around by their own leaders and the IDF without any control, without any say at all. This is just a really sucky situation for them. So, in the top left quadrant, we have everybody mostly wins. Yes, there's still some complications there. In the bottom left quadrant, we have the Palestinians survive, but, they kind of get a raw end of a deal. In the top right corner, we've got a bunch of senseless deaths. And in the bottom right quadrant, the Palestinians die to hold on to land that they're getting expunged from anyway. So, given this wager, what's the best option here? The best option is to just let the Palestinians leave. The pros of letting them leave far outweigh the pros of forcing them to stay. And even if this wager goes south, they're still getting a far better deal than if Destiny had his way. I think it's ironic that Destiny calls this a virtue signal. I mean, he's the one wanting to force people to stay in a war zone, even though every outcome of them staying is bad, just so that the Israeli government doesn't look bad in front of a European audience. It seems to me that Destiny is the one virtue signaling here, not Joseph. Now, Destiny does make an interesting argument that the Jews were kind of in a similar situation 70, 80 years ago when they came to the Levant. They had the option of leaving, but decided to stay because they thought dying was worth it.
But I mean, arguably, the entire founding of your country was a bunch of people saying, F it, we're going to go tough it out here and see how it works. And the first few groups of people that went, it sucked, right? Your first couple batches of people that came from Eastern Russia had a really rough time, and over half of them left up until 1920. You said it yourself. There were massacres, famous ones. Hebron was one, where people went and they died. And it's not like, people were saying, oh, we should just pack up and leave and go back to Brooklyn or go back to Europe or whatever, right? There are people that are willing to make sacrifices to maintain territory because they feel like they have some, massive historical right to it. I don't have to make those decisions in the United States. It's not as simple as just running away from an enemy that's attacking me. You're talking about a group of people that are willing to suicide bomb sometimes in order to fight a country. It wouldn't surprise me if these people are also willing to suicide their families.
100, and that's why it's voluntary.
However, there are some key differences in these scenarios. Number one, the Jews were already being expunged from every corner of the earth. Not just the Holocaust, but also the Russian pogroms, also being expelled from Afghanistan and Iran. They were literally being pushed from every corner of the earth. They had only two places to go. Back home to Jerusalem or to the America. And even America wasn't willing to take in as many Jews as were having to really flee Europe. We got Albert Einstein, and I'm glad we got him, but not all the Jews could have come to America. They needed to go somewhere. They were being driven out everywhere else, so they just went home, back to Jerusalem. Now, second difference, which this one is going to stand a little bit in contrast to the last one. Yeah, they would have been going back to just as bad persecution, but, right, we're getting persecuted here, we're getting persecuted there, just pick your poison type thing. They could have left the Levant. Destiny was saying that, they could have done that. But he's using this to want to argue that therefore, because the Jews did not decide to return to Europe, therefore, the Gazans should not be allowed to have the same choice that the Jews decided not to make. Because the Jews decided not to make this choice, therefore the Gazans should not have the liberty to make this choice. The third difference is, and this is just something that really struck me, Destiny describes the Palestinians as willing to suicide bomb, willing to suicide their family over this land dispute. His words, not mine. To be frank, this is a sick and twisted logic. Because the Palestinians are willing to blow themselves up to kill Jews, or willing to blow their children up in order to kill Jews, therefore we gotta sympathize with them? I mean, I get what he's saying. They are very devout to their cause. And devotion to your cause is a virtue. Like, I've got a lot of respect for somebody who's willing to die for their beliefs. A man who's willing to stand up under pressure, under persecution, under torture, even against death. That is a person that I respect. But a man who suicides his family to fight a war for a government that keeps him in poverty, that is not something I respect. And a government that encourages its citizens to strap bombs on their sons and send them out in the battlefield to kill citizens, that is a wicked government that needs to be eradicated. But Joseph turns this around really well. He concludes the video with a speech about how this is the great perversion of the situation, and I am 100% in agreement with him. Let's check it out.
If European nations and Western nations don't like the look of it, I don't care. Like, I'm done bending the knee to the Jews are done bending the knee to Europeans. This is the perversity of what's happening. We're being accused of genocide when we're doing more than almost any other military, probably any military in the history of military campaigns, to minimize civilian casualties in one of the most complex battle arenas you could imagine, hugely populated, millions of people living in a tiny confined area with a militia or a terrorist force, or however you want to describe Hamas, that want to maximize casualties on both sides. And in that context, Israel has done everything it can to minimize civilian casualties, yet we're being accused of genocide by the West in some perverse twist of reality when 6 million of our people were killed by Europeans. It's almost like they're trying to atone or cleanse for the sins of their ancestors by projecting that onto us. Like, we are not genociding. There is no genocide here.
Man, he's cooking. Joseph is absolutely right here. Why are we putting such pressure on Israel and how they conduct this war? They've gone above and beyond in every metric possible to ensure the best situation for the Gazan citizens. Hamas broke in during a peace festival, murdered 1,200 people, took 200 more as captives. It's still holding some of them as captives, actually starving them. The starvation that's going on in Gaza is the Israeli captives. And the Western world just closes a blind eye to everything that Hamas has done to provoke this war. And they're accusing Israel of genocide. This is ludicrous. Hamas provoked this war. I don't see how anyone can blame Israel for anything that they've been doing. Yes, there are accidents that happens in war, but Israel has gone above and beyond to ensure an absolute minimal of casualties have gone on in this war against an enemy who's trying to capitalize on civilian casualties to get Western sympathies. And it's working. All this really is a bunch of anti-Semitic people desperate for an excuse for their anti-Semitism. So Joseph is absolutely right to say the Jews don't care anymore. They're not going to be gaslighted by Europe anymore for what Europe has spent the last 1,000 years doing to them. And that's what this is. This is European powers gaslighting the Jews, projecting their worst atrocities in history on the victims of those atrocities. Man, I'm cooking. And this isn't just Israel anymore. The entire world is getting fed up with Islamism. While I was working on the script, a young 12-year-old girl got arrested in Scotland for defending her and her sister from being raped by Muslim migrants. The UK is furious with their government for the favor that they've been giving to these Muslim migrants. And now there's talks about the possibility of a civil war, the citizens of the UK versus the government and the Muslim migrants of the UK. Then also, Australia has been protesting the same thing there. The government is bringing in a whole bunch of Muslim migrants. The people have had enough. And Canada is breaking. It's more than just the Muslim migrants with Canada. But 4 of their provinces are looking to secede from the Union and possibly join the United States. Earlier this year, there was also a war between India and Pakistan that kind of flew under the radar. But the Hindi people also did not care about the Western pressure to be nice to Pakistan. The world is frustrated with Islam. The world is done with it. So, This is honestly a much more complicated situation than just letting the Palestinians leave, because there is a reason why Egypt isn't letting them into their land. The Palestinians, specifically, even among the Muslim nations, are known for their anarchy, are known for destroying civilizations. England is done having their nation be destroyed. Australia is done having their nation be destroyed. Canada is done having their nation be destroyed. India is done having their nation be destroyed. Israel is done having their nation be destroyed. The weapon that the liberals have been projecting against all of us is this virtue signal that Destiny alluded to. It doesn't make you look nice. Well, these nations don't care anymore if they look nice. Life is not nice for them anymore. Israel is not the problem. Islam is the problem. Islam is the one that established a terrorist regime as a proxy government and sent its people to commit suicide bombings in Israel. Islam is the one sending millions of migrants across the Western world, destroying nations and raping their daughters in the streets, and the police of those nations are just arresting the victims, and we're not being allowed to talk about it. Islam is the problem, not Israel. Now, I want to be clear on something. I'm not just hitting a popular talking point with the Israel and Gaza conflict. You can look back on my channel and see I've made videos about the Jewish people in Israel for a long time. If anything, once October 7th happened, I actually pulled back. I did not want to get political, and so I mostly stayed quiet. And in this time, I've also not had the encouragement to make videos because the thing that's been bothering me, I've not wanted to make videos on. So I don't want to stay quiet anymore. The Jew hatred that's been sweeping across the entire world is nothing shy of demonic, and it needs to be addressed. My conscience now compels me. I will not be silent. I remember back in 2019 a discussion I was having with a Jewish person, and there's something that really just kind of gave me a lot to think about. The Jewish person acknowledged that a lot of Christians now are suddenly being really nice and friendly to Jews. But she said that it's kind of hard to know that they can trust us at this point. It disturbs me to see that she was right. What will the next generation of Jews say about Christians? Will they say, yep, we were right, we couldn't trust them. When we needed them most, they turned their back on us. That would be so dishonoring to the name of Christ. Instead, my hope is that the next generation of Jews will look at Christians and say, when the world came crashing down on us, it was the Christians who stood up for us. And so that's what my voice wants to be. I want my voice to let the Jews know that Christians are their allies. And so thus I give this final message to the Jews. I know it looks like the world is turning against you, and I know it looks like Christianity has turned its back on you too. This is the great deception. The world is propping up Christian voices to represent Christ in criticism of Israel. But that is not what the Christian populace think. Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, people like them, they are despised within the Christian populace. Their followers are primarily unchurched Christians who probably most of them have only been in the faith for 5 years or less. The people who have grown up in the faith, deeply religious, deeply devout, they tend to support Israel. I'm involved in many Christian communities, and the majority of Christians I talk with support Israel. People I talk with across the world support Israel. The media doesn't want you seeing this because the media wants you to feel isolated and alone. You are not. It's the silent voices that are being censored. They're the ones who support you. It's a loud, obnoxious minority that are taken to the internet that are giving us all a bad name. We reject them. They do not represent us. And those who don't are probably just jealous because it is abundantly evident that God is with you. So, peace to you, Israel. We pray for the peace of Israel. We pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And we are cheering you on. You are the front line of all of our battle. Not all of us have realized it yet. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and God bless.